All right. Well, good morning, Greg. It's just me and you today. You have
It's
we're
us.
recording this on election day, so
We are.
Shelly's busy, obviously, and you're standing by on QRF up
Exactly.
there in Gunnison. Although if it's something that Shelly can't handle, then I don't know if anyone can. So
Exactly. So my QRF would just be to show up and pat her on the back and go, well done.
good
You see
job.
what I'm trying to say? So,
Yeah.
hey, and Adam Murdy, we'll know if he got the sheriff's position later
Oh, there
this
you go.
afternoon as
There you
well,
go.
for Gunnison County and for all the Gunnison County SO or PD officers and sheriff's deputies that are listening. Woo!
There we
Get out
go.
and vote, you bastards.
So we're both still a little kind of getting over some of the crud from traveling over the entire
Unbelievable.
month of
Yeah.
October, but all good that it's happening now and we made it through the month without while we were freebasing cold medicine basically, but
Yep.
but we're there
And emergency. Let's do a shout out for them too.
yeah.
Seriously, here we go. If it wasn't for those packets, I don't know what we would have done.
Yeah, exactly. So one of today kind of the general theme that we're going to talk about actually came from our discussion on our Patreon side that we did the
Mm,
other week. For those subscribers on there, you guys can check that out if you're listening, and the link is in the episode details. But it's where we talk about the little things, right? And what we mean by the little things and how it's the little things that matter. And these big events or big things that occur are often obvious and can be planned for. So we mean it's all about the little things in a number of different ways. So maybe I'll throw to you to start off. Like, what do
yeah,
you mean when we
yeah.
say like by the little things?
So I'm going to be all over today. I'm going to be like
Yeah,
a
perfect.
Roman candle. One of the things I want our listeners to understand, Brian, is the way we use information is different from anybody else. And we were the pioneers, we were the forerunners, the front runners of putting certain information together. And what I mean by that is certainly I didn't invent entropy. Okay,
Right.
but using the second law of thermodynamics and
Right.
the entropic principle in human behavior, that's me. When we start talking about stuff later in the episode about sequencing and change blindness and adaptation and channel capacity, I got channel capacity, the actual words channel capacity, and using those four things together, nobody had done it before. I got it from computer science.
Right.
I was trying to name things that you and I saw people make mistakes with
Right.
and out with Shelley and go, there's got to be a term for that. And there wasn't. So I looked up, and the closest thing was channel capacity. And then it started talking about, Higgs and Zipf and all these other things. And I put it together with a word that was common back then in computer science. So why did I give that preface? Because when you see things, you must see them in their totality, and you must have a number of lenses, because your primitive self didn't. Your primitive self created efficiencies, and those efficiencies are still on board today based on your survival, and it makes you dumber. It
Okay.
resists an overflow of information, so you have just enough to draw a reasonable conclusion right now to get the safety. And
Right.
that's the problem, Brian.
And you tied it to survival, and that's part of
Yep,
what I mean too when we say all humans are lazy, right? We create these shortcuts and we miss little things because
exactly.
we're sort of in a sense still wired in a way for a world that is not the world it is today.
Simplistic
Yes.
cues, slow cues, and repeated inferences. And our brain would say, hey, that thing is red. Red is a danger color. I smell something. That is a danger smell. I see motion out of my peripheral vision. Those are all dangerous things. Look, a monkey's eyes are set up without a sclera. So the panther on the floor of the jungle can't see the monkey looking for an exit.
Exit.
The
Yeah.
chimp is looking for a limb
It's
to
like a
run away on.
rabbit. Yeah.
So those types of things are set up, Brian, and have been, and they're still on board. So we forget, like, how many times I wish we had $1 for every time we said the worst witness in the world is an eyeball witness.
Right.
Why? Because we're overwhelmed by the amount of information that we're taking in now and the speed at which we need to process that. Now, God, Buddha, Vishnu, Allah, everybody's wonderful, and our brains can assimilate a tremendous amount of information now, much more than before. But guess what? The open door to the stadium is vast. That's our brain.
Uh-huh.
But the open door to the stadium is still this
It's still
big,
small. Yeah.
okay, because of the survival gating mechanism, the efficiency that our brain has. So that door, we ain't going to get it any bigger, Brian. So what we have to do is we have to process the little things faster to come
Okay.
to more reasonable conclusions
And
more quickly.
and that's the sort of the caveat to it all is to come to the reasonable conclusion. And we
Yeah.
all we often come to unreasonable
We
conclusions.
rush to them. We rush
Well,
to unreasonable conclusions
and
sometimes.
because we're in a sense sort of wired for a more primitive lifestyle, which things
Yes.
are more complicated now than they were several thousands or tens of thousands of years ago. 20, I mean, we're
Yes.
talking a long time ago that we're still wired the same way. And so which also causes us to create errors. So back then things were simple. So like you said, that movement out of the side of my eye, the little thing, the branch shaking on the tree, I had to see that, and it had
It
to be
wasn't my
important.
it wasn't my son coming over to say trick or treat.
Right, 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 right.
It was a predator. It was going
So
to
so
eat my
that's
brain.
that's the thing. So I had to know that. I had to do that. But over time, because we don't have those
Right.
predators, we start kind of like we since we're wired to attribute either human values or agency to objects that don't necessarily have it, right? Like the tree, right, as an
Exactly. Great
example.
way of putting it. Yep.
So then we sit there and go, oh, well, it must be that it creates the story, right? That's where the owl becomes the Bigfoot, that kind of thing.
Precisely.
So we have these sort of errors, like fundamental attribution errors and confirmation bias
Right.
that lead to that. Now, we talked about all that stuff before, but that's where I think that's a great starting point for what we mean by those little things, because you
Yeah.
brought
Yeah.
it
So
right back to survival.
let me throw one out there.
Okay.
And we'll start there. Let's start with tabula rasa. We got a clean plate today, everybody. Just a white background. And what we're going to throw at it is a couple of ideas, and then you formulate the synapses
Okay.
that we're going to
Yeah.
create in your brain. So my first one, Brian, that I'll throw at you is parking. When I walk
Okay.
through a parking lot, the first thing that I take a look at is how the vehicles are parked. Are they backed in, or what people sometimes call combat parked?
Yeah,
Uh,
which, by the way, just to clear that up, people have been backing into parking spaces before the military came
well,
up with a
well
term
before
before it. So,
exactly. So the idea is we steal absolutely everything that we
yeah,
can and make it our own. But is the vehicle hastily parked? Is it illegally parked? Is it parked in a manner where you can see that the person didn't give a lot of forethought to being able to back out of that spot? Why? Because all of those are demonstrative to me of critical thinking skills or the
or
lack
lack
thereof,
of, or demonstrations of
or
intent. Yeah,
demonstrations of intent, or the opposite of that,
yeah,
lack of visionary gift of time and distance. So, like when I see a person pull right up to a place and park in a place where it says no fucking parking, pardon my language, anytime, but they pull up there and then they put their emergency flashers on, and you
yeah,
go, "What's the emergency?" And they go, "Well, my old lady just ran in for a minute." That
yeah.
doesn't constitute an emergency.
Right.
First of all, you should be slapped for using your flasher. Second, the reason that people aren't supposed to park there is bad things happen there. And that's where emergency vehicles need to pull up. So when I see somebody dwell or linger in a place like that, Brian, I'm immediately on edge. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So that alone, the parking part alone, is something that if you paid more attention to today, like remember the old feral cat? Look around for feral cats. Once you
Yeah,
find one, you'll spot them.
you'll
Well, we
start
used to
spotting
do
others.
so we did that as a
Eh,
situation awareness trick to
Yeah.
enhance situation awareness. I would tell you that this one, look out for parking and then conduct sustained observation. You're going to find everything you need to find about the human condition. You're going to find bad guys. You're going to find idiots. You're going to find ne'er-do-wells and non-rule followers. And that's where the danger lies anyway. So one thing in your day that you changed, Brian, imagine how powerful that could be.
No, and that's why, that's a perfect example of what we mean by the little things. Everyone's
Yep.
talking about, all right, every video breakdown you see, every event, everyone talking about it. It's like, okay, here's the person. It's like, dude, why don't you roll that tape back and do them walking in across the parking lot from where they park in because right away, before anything ever fucking happens, you can
We're
see,
on gas
hey, this is a
stations
little
again.
odd and we need to call 911. Well, no, not gas
No,
station,
no,
but we
but
need just
did you see that latest vid, Brian? The
no.
latest vid is the guy's getting gas, and all of a sudden, a vehicle backs up in front of him, and a van pulls up behind him. And like a clown car, these
Oh yeah.
parkour bandits get out, all dressed like ninjas, and surround the guy, and they're doing. It's like, stop. Do you know how much advanced work has to be done? Do you know how many molecules and atoms are in motion to create that event?
Yeah.
Shut up,
Yeah,
So no, I
no,
laugh about that because those are perfect. Because any idiot can break down a video and go,
yeah,
look right here. This is the
while it's in progress.
at
You're
bang.
doing it while it's in
Exactly.
progress. So like no fucking shit. It's
Really.
obvious at this point. Thank you very
Yep.
much. But
Thank you,
it's
Captain Obvious.
yeah, it's rolling the tape back, and
Right.
that's another thing. Now, problem is like we always talk about is everyone wants, well, give me this list of these indicators or give me the
Oh,
list
we
of the
just gave you a couple,
and it
right?
and it's so context dependent, right?
It
And
is.
that's
It
what we
really
focus on is
is.
what's normal for this given situation. But those little things, that pocket lint is more important than the big things because those big things are flipping obvious. I mean,
Exactly.
they're
And they're
so
going to be
obvious
too
or
close
rare.
to bang, Brian. They're
Yes.
going to be too close to bang. They're going to be the atmospheric just before bang occurs. So look, we gave parking. Parking is a big bucket. It's an ice cube tray
Yeah.
element, right? But it spills over another thing. So let's throw one more out there on the tabula rasa. Our second paintball that's going to splatter on the white sheet is going to be driving. Brian, what do we know about people that don't use their blinkers? They're
Yeah.
not rule followers.
Yeah.
If they're going to do stupid things like slow down or speed up to change lanes without indicating, and that is risky behavior. So anybody that's going to engage in risky behavior is going to continue to do that, and it's going to make it unsafe for the rest of us. So there's one more thing. Okay, you're talking about the little things. If you change lanes without signaling, you just came up on my radar. Now you're saying, well, people do that all the time. Yeah, and so do bad people, and so do
Yeah.
shitty people, and people that get in an accident. So what I do is I say, now I've got parking, now I've got driving. Those are two things I do every day that 1 degree, can you imagine one
Yeah.
degree of improvement in those, or an
And
increased visibility where I say these things matter is going to make me safer and harder to kill.
and it's your parking example is a perfect one about how identifying those things, it's almost like fractal in nature, meaning I go through,
Exactly.
I see the pickup truck backed into a parking spot. Okay, well, it's clean and it's newer. It's like, okay, well, I can continue that and go, let's go deeper. Okay, it's got a lift kit and it's got this on it. Now is that a real off-road vehicle, or is that a parking lot princess, they call it?
Right.
And what is that? What other things are on there that would add to this? Okay, can I now go in that place and find a person who likely belongs to that
Absolutely.
truck? What would I
Or,
look for?
and if you can't,
So
Brian, if you can't, you could get the 100 people in that place down to
down to
two.
10, yeah,
Yeah,
or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And
So
that's the key. Isn't that how we found bombs? The whole idea behind Combat Hunter in Iraq and finding IEDs was the same thing. Listen, we're not going to find all of them. We're going to find a bunch of them. And
yeah,
you know what? We're not going to
that's a
find every
win.
bomb maker or bomb emplacer, but we're going to find a bunch of them. And that's going to make us safer and smarter. And we're going to learn from their TTPs, turn them against them, and those type of things. You just said it. That truck. Now, I would counter with this. We see a vehicle running in the parking lot. Okay. But the vehicle isn't too close to the entry doors, and it's a cold day. Well, those are people that leave their car running for something,
Right,
and they don't think
right.
their car is going to get ripped. One, they're in there ripping something, they want a getaway vehicle. Or two, you're going to park close to their vehicle, and you might be there during the carjacking. Those are things you can avoid. So if you can avoid them by adding a second to
No,
the 27-minute exposure at City Market, you're safer. Right? You
That's the
avoided
thing.
danger.
It was one of, I forget which shooting, or sort of an in progress situation, and it was like, well, how do you get these little indicators what someone's gonna do? It's like, hey man, when you see a car door open,
Yep.
there's no reason for a car door to ever be open for an extended period of time unless you're working on it, going in and out of it. So
Precisely.
unless you get out of that vehicle and, oh crap, I forgot something in my house as I was pulling out of my driveway and I got to run back in and get it, and I left the
And
car door
everybody
open a little
else is
bit.
sitting there holding
Yeah,
their lunch boxes and
that makes
stuff ready to
sense.
go, right?
It's either I'm coming right back, like right
Yep.
now, or I'm never
Never
coming
ever
back to
coming
that
back.
car. And
Right,
it's
right.
like, well, a car, yeah, like that's something that a car door open. And what but
So add a level of complexity. Now you got the car door open, the car's unoccupied. Now the car door is open and the car's running. You
yeah.
get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
So
oh
now
yeah,
you have an
yeah.
escalation. And if you don't, folks, if you're listening to Brian and I for the first time in the first couple of times, and you don't pick up what we're laying down right now, this is why you need to get to training. This is the kind of stuff you can't get from
Right.
some shitty
So
breakdown on YouTube. You have to go to training because your brain has to reprioritize and
let's
recategorize how information goes.
and so let's just, that was a good sort of spiral as an example of the parking lot, then with the vehicles, and then now we're gonna keep spinning around that
I
topic.
got one
But
more though.
no, but
Yeah.
what I want to kind of get into is that, is the sort of what we started with is okay, this is where it came from, these are the little things,
Yes,
why do we miss those little things? Because you brought it up at the beginning, so I just want to hit it now.
so let me
Is that
add one more thing just
okay?
before you go, because I don't want everybody to think this episode is just going to be about driving and parking.
Yeah.
Let's talk about trash.
Oh yeah,
where
yeah.
trash
We're back
accumulates.
in the parking lot. Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And as we walk up, look, if you can't clean the floor on the elevator after a Saturday night at the hotel I'm staying in, you're
Yeah.
not going to be checking the security monitors. If you haven't wiped the
Right.
dust off of the ring at the hotel pool that you use to save a life with the shepherd's crook, you're probably not monitoring that pool closely enough.
Yeah.
If I'm walking in the city market and I look in the trash and it hasn't been picked up because I can see the paper's old, you know, the date on the information, all that other stuff, and the items are decaying, what chance do I have if I'm having a stroke in the parking lot that
Yeah.
you're going to get me to hospital in time? What I'm trying to say is I want to emblazon your point so brightly that people can't miss it. They go, fuck, I know exactly what they're talking about. It's those little breadcrumbs that add up to, you know, the trail that leads to the witch's house.
Yeah.
And,
No.
and if you
That
don't pay attention, you're going to die.
that's you know exactly goes into the you know when we go to an organization, you walk in, the bathroom is immaculate.
First
It's
place
like,
we
you
check.
know what I mean? It's like, okay, that's a good sign of how they keep their house in order, and keeping your
And if
house in order is far more important than everything else that you do, or it's the foundation of what you
the
do, right?
foundation, unless you take pictures of your relatives and only put them on the wall when your relatives are showing up, and you only cleaned the bathroom and refilled the toilet paper and put a smelly stick in there
Well,
if you knew I was coming. Do you get
well,
what I'm trying to say, Brian? Is it a pattern of behavior, right?
we do that in our homes, right? We always take the extra time.
Totally.
Oh, we're having company over. Let's make sure this, you know, but it's only, you can still tell. You can tell when that's been
Yep.
done topically, or this is something that's consistent, right?
Are they phoning it in, or is
Yeah,
this a
yeah,
pattern of
and
behavior?
it
Because we're looking for the pattern.
no, and that's a great point. So I love how we're just talking about parking lots and bathrooms and cars, and it's gonna spiral down real
But
quick.
think about it. It's so
No, no.
simple. I mean, if you start with the least common denominator, you're always going to find evidence. You know what? You and I talked about this before on the road, and we talked about it probably in countless podcasts about the difference between baking and cooking.
Yeah, yeah,
Anybody
yeah,
can cook. We've cooked
yeah,
for ourselves.
yeah.
Baking is an exact specific art,
Well,
right?
all
So,
cooking is like, you
yeah,
have
yeah,
to
but
follow a recipe and you have to know what you're doing. Yeah,
I
yeah,
got it. But I'm telling you, you can't microwave bake something
yeah,
perfect.
yeah,
Okay. But you can microwave a bunch of things together and they'll come out pretty edible. I've been
yeah,
drunk enough to try that
yeah. I
and
gotcha.
you know, different limited objective experiments. So cooking, there's a wide swath of mistakes you can make and still have something be edible. I'll give you an example. We were downrange once, and remember Mermite containers? They dropped the Mermite containers in on us because it was so flipping cold. And inside of the military Mermites, they had soup and they had coffee. That was the only two things that you could get a canteen cup full. I'm saying canteen cup to a Marine. He's never heard of that term. But there was a thing on your canteen at one time. There was a metal cup at the bottom that you had handles. Veterans Day's coming up, bitches. And so you got to get in line and you got either soup or coffee. That's all you got. Well, the soup, they put sugar in the soup and they put salt in the coffee. Now, it was completely accidental. Do you get what I'm saying? But you know how the military does it. It was over the limits of tolerance. So the people like me that got the soup, they were fine. The people that got the salted coffee, they couldn't drink it. So
Yeah,
there's a big path that you can make a mistake and still survive in life. And that's what we're talking about. Not every running car or open door is going to lead to Godzilla that's tramping the city and eating everybody.
but
But
if you do,
everyone that did
yes,
lead to a
yes,
Godzilla came back
exactly.
to that open door,
Yes.
right?
No, no,
So
that's the point, is
I
it's
don't
not
know what
always,
that's called.
it's not always, well, no, it's not always gonna necessarily lead you to someone that's about to do something or an in progress situation. But if you don't stop to
The
investigate or
corollary
see
is
those little
always
things,
true.
yeah, it's
Yes,
always yeah, that's things you're never going to see that, well, because we missed it. But
too late.
um so why do we miss these things? So
Yes.
there's different things you started to bring them up,
Well,
and you
let's
know,
start
part
with
of it.
channel capacity
Well,
then, because that's the first
yeah,
one.
so big picture
Sure.
is kind of how we sort of define why we miss these things, what sort of referred to as complacency or
Yes.
lack of situation or situational awareness, is a couple things. So I'll list them out and let you start, Greg. But you've got, you know,
Certainly.
things like adaptation and change blindness, and you've
Yep.
got channel capacity and sequencing, and
Yep.
these are processes in your brain that you really can't do anything about other than understanding that they exist, right? And trying to counteract them with some methodology, with some system or
Yep.
process. You can do that, but they're on board and they're there. So I'll let you throw to one, because you started with channel capacity. One,
Yep.
you give like a street definition of
So,
that, or what do you mean
so
by
you
that?
know Sean Clemens and Sean's dear son Christian. got his pilot's license very young. He's only 15 years old. And now he's, doing the different levels of flying with visual aided and unvisual aided and different speeds and things. And one of the things that I'm sure that if he was here, he would tell you is that there's a pre-flight checklist, and you've got to do the pre-flight checklist all the time. Say that 5 times fast. And the reason is, Brian, because our brain cannot function on a bunch of levels at once. Our brain hates divided attention. So the maximum number of inputs, and this is right from computer science, and you can trade it back to Higgs, Zip, and OODA loop, and all those other things. The maximum amount of things that the balls that we can keep juggling in the air at one time is 3. Now, science has said, well, in certain people, because of this and that and the other, it can be plus or minus 1 or plus or minus 2. You know what the plus or minus is? Take that away and think of just the 3 things, okay? Because you, in an emergency situation, only have certain channels available to you. And if those channels are full, you'll die. So in regular, ordinary circumstances, when nothing is bothering you, that number is generally 7, okay? And you get a 7 plus or minus 1 or plus or minus 2. But we can't keep that up, and that's unsustainable over time. Those are the mild, like I can have the TV on and be talking to Shelly while I'm looking at my crossword. But the problem is when I attend to them, I won't do any of them very well.
Right.
Do you get what I'm trying to say? Unless I stop for a minute and put down my book and hit mute and go, I'm sorry, baby, what was that? You understand?
You've only got 100% attention, and you can't. So if it's divided between
if you
7
divide
things,
it, it's less attention everywhere else. You're precisely.
Each thing is only getting a fraction of that.
And it's just an efficiency. Your brain drops from a higher number of things that you can keep rolling to a lower number, so your brain can focus on survival, because all of your senses don't stop. They're still sending information, but the ones that you focus on feel as though they slow down.
So that's the idea, is that, everyone talks about, different physiological response. We have, sort of this increase of performance, cognitive performance, even physical performance sometimes. And the way I would define it, it's not really an increase in performance. It's actually a decrease in fucking bullshit, right? Your brain says, hey, we don't need to we don't need to pay attention to any of this shit. You need this thing right in front of you, because it's some sort of survival situation, whether you train for that or not. And then that number of things, like your channel capacity, drops, right? That's where you get the, the shoot, move, communicate, tap, rack, bang, 911, stop, drop, roll, all of that stuff is rule of 3s for a reason, because you can handle that. And the second something else gets thrown in there, it's got to go. And if anyone's experienced that, you almost feel like, wow, things are moving in slow motion.
But they aren't. So that's the magic. That's the perception of it. Time is consistent.
But the perception of that time is changed, is altered, because it's not that you're suddenly become better. It's just that your brain suddenly dumps everything it doesn't need and only focuses on what's right in front of it. And then, wow, look at that. But that's even what gets into the science behind what people call like the flow state and all that stuff, is you can get into a position of
cannabis, thinking fast and slow. All of those,
where you're so focused on something that you lose external arousal, and you can focus on that. And then time seems to slow down. It's really just your brain is only focusing on a few things at a time, which is really good for attention. But that's not sustainable, right? Long term, you can only do that in short bursts.
Yeah, and the reason is because you have chemical reserves that work in your brain, and they're used up like fuel in your gas can or gas tank rather, or the electricity in your battery. And the idea is that they have to rejuvenate. So you can't. You know what? When we did the Fireman's podcast, the standard. By the way, folks, that's out.
Check that out. I'll put the link.
Brian will put an episode details. I knew you were going to say it. One of the things that we talked about there was hypersensitivity and being able to sustain it. You can't. You cannot. Listen, you cannot go to the gym and run full speed at the gym for 72 hours, because your body has to recoup. 1/3 of our life must be spent sleeping to tool the brain, to restart all of the mechanisms. So listen, if those things are important, why do we get eye fatigue? Because it's telling you need to go take a break. You're not at 100% when you're looking at your environment. So all of those indications are screaming to us that channel capacity is important. And that's one of 4 things that we
So,
balance, isn't
so,
it?
and the other part we sort of put together with channel capacity is called sequencing, and
Exactly.
really is just your brain has to make order out of chaos. So
Always.
it likes things sequential. It likes to put things in
Yep.
order so that you can take them in one at a time and you can make sense out of it. And then we love predictability, right?
Yes.
That's all humans. It's we just want things to be predictable because that's safe. We know we can plan things. It's comforting to us. Anything unpredictable, anything with uncertainty, humans sort
Yep.
of have this natural aversion to. So immediately what we try to do is create a sequence of events. So
Yep.
what'll start happening in the examples we would use, especially when you get these videos of someone like in police custody who ends up having a gun on them, even though they
Yep.
went through and searched, and everyone's like, oh, these guys suck. They didn't do their job. It's like, well, look, if I Greg, if I search you and I don't find any sort of contraband on you, anything illegal or
Yes.
whatever, all right, good. I go to the next person, I search that person, I don't find anything. I go to the next person, I search them, I don't find anything. By that next person, already my brain's going, oh, okay, I get the game.
Yep.
We get a little hit of dopamine when we don't find anything sometimes. Okay, everything's good. So I'm unlikely to get this. So since I haven't found anything the last few, it's unlikely I'm going to find anything on this next
So
person.
now add that to checking the back seat for contraband or the person dropped a weapon back there. So you do that commensurate to every single arrest, every single person that goes in the back seat and comes out. You check that, and you're checking the double lock on the handcuffs. Now you also have to hit the button for the Sally port and put your gun in the lockbox. And you made a bunch of traffic stops, and the first 7 traffic stops you made, there wasn't any danger on. So what happens is you desensitize the part of your brain that is working on the survival reckoning. So now your amygdalic reaction to your environment isn't as strong. And when you smell or hear or see those things, your reactions are retarded, slower, just like
Yeah.
an engine, just like a spark plug firing when the rotor hits it. It's delayed, and now your engine is running inefficiently. Folks, if you understand that, then you have to understand why coppers and firemen and first responders and teachers get dumber and miss those cues.
Yeah.
Because what happens is the sequence is safe. Your brain anticipates the rest of the sequence
Yeah.
will be safe because it's an efficiency. I don't have to burn extra chemicals. I don't have to burn extra calories. And you know what? Almost all the time, it's right.
And
It's almost always right.
it's the mental etch a sketch, right? I'm building that picture. My brain
Exactly.
has to build that picture and it has to create that sequence. So if I've done it before, it starts filling in those details before they
Yep.
arrive, right? It
Yep.
starts projecting what's likely to occur based on its knowns, and it falls back on what's the most efficient way to do it. And so if I don't shake up that etch a sketch every once in a while, right, I'm gonna my brain will fill in the picture regardless of whether or not something's there.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so we kind of put those two together, that sort of channel capacity
Yeah,
and
they're
sequencing.
both, they're opposite sides of the same coin, and they're definitely in the same realm. But those now, if we want to create a ball, now we have the circumference and the radius handled, but we want to go the opposite direction and create another circumference. So we're creating the Celtic cross that's going to build out to a 360 ball. We have to have 2 more things to put things in context when we see objects in our environment start to coalesce, when they start to come together. And one of those that we have to be worried of is adaptation, Brian. And what happens is the more we're exposed to things, even novel things, the less our brain gives them importance.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of
No,
the
it's just
example, like for example, with pornography. You know how people they start with just a magazine article, then they're online, then they buy it. Now it's the drapes are closed, they can't get out of the house, and they look like Quagmire with the big arm.
yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that. It can be other things. It can be sedentary lifestyle. You sit down and you wake up the next day and you're 40 pounds overweight and you can't get out of your chair. Right? Okay,
Yeah,
those
no,
don't
and
happen immediately, but we think that those things are still in play, and our brain pays less and less attention to them. So
yeah,
when we don't attend to those nuance changes, we can be in trouble
Yeah,
sometimes.
and that sensory adaptation is huge too. I mean, like you said,
Right.
it's like remember we've gone into a place and they had like an alarm kept going off and like no one paid any attention to it. And I'm
Yep.
like, hey, is that the everything is okay alarm? And they're like, what?
Exactly.
I go, it
Exactly.
sounds
You,
like this
Shelly,
thing
and
is
I were outside, if you'll recall, and it was raining and
but it was
shitty.
like
Right.
and it was going like,
Yep.
oh well, yeah, that happens because something got tripped and they haven't
Yep.
fixed it yet. So now I'm exposed to the stimulus so much and my brain no longer attributes value to it. It's like
Exactly.
going from being in a, out in the country out in the middle of nowhere to all of a sudden you're living in a city and you're hearing sirens and stuff at night. It's the old Blues Brothers, right? When he goes back to his apartment, everybody picks him up from
Exactly.
Joliet and he goes and the subway goes by or the L train in Chicago goes by, shakes the whole apartment, everything in there, and it's like, yeah, how often does that go by? So often you won't
So
even notice. I mean, that's the
exactly.
thing is we
Well,
we
let me give
keep
you
that
one. You
stuff
remember when
out.
we were teaching in Columbus, Georgia, for that airline that shall remain
Yeah,
nameless,
yeah,
and you and I went into the airport terminal area, or the airport. What's the other outer area? My brain is just screwed. Where the before you even have your ticketing and all that other stuff, there's a food court and all those things where people show up,
yeah,
and they haven't even gone out to their concourse yet. Where the train dumped everybody off, the MARTA at Atlanta Airport.
yeah. I know what you mean.
So
There's just the initial like mezzanine level
yeah, yeah,
check-in.
and
There's baggage
it,
claim there. There's
now you
cafeteria.
go
There's
to
food
security.
there.
Now you
Yeah,
go to
yeah,
right,
yeah.
but nobody there had to have a ticket, and some people just
Yeah,
showed up, and we were advised that, listen, of all of the crimes that occurred in the airport, 90% of the crimes occur right
right
here
there. Yeah,
before everybody goes out
yeah.
there, and you
There's
can
a
be
ton of
victimized.
theft at
Yeah,
airports. Yeah,
it's so you and I were conducting a limited objective experiment, and we saw the guy with the drum magazine on his M4 that had the sign saying, "Hey, Second Amendment, I'm free to carry my weapon anywhere I want." And he was walking around and posing with people, having photos. And if you recall, I got in an argument with the guy, and I said, "I'm not against the Second Amendment or your right to carry a weapon, but what you're doing is you're causing adaptation to occur for all of the security that's
yeah,
around here, because you're walking in random times during the day for your photo op with military style fatigues on. Do you get what I'm saying? And you got a long beard, and you got this automatic weapon that people are saying." See, what happens, Brian, is if we see that all the time,
yeah.
our brain goes, "Oh, it stops being afraid and shocked by this potential hazard." And a little of that can be good from time to time to spur your arousal of new events. But if you get it all the time, constantly, like that alarm you're talking about, you forget it. So that guy who was trying to make the Second Amendment a point was actually making the Atlanta airport more dangerous
Yeah,
and more susceptible to somebody walking in with an automatic weapon.
it's making us all dumber. All of that stuff is just people wandering around with that. Well, then now no one pays attention to it anymore. You're just making it
Yep.
easier for someone who wants to do harm is what you're doing.
Hey, the
But
mask.
that
We have adapted to COVID masks now, so
right.
nobody pays attention when somebody wearing a mask comes into a bank, for example.
And
Those
and
are
and
It's
that
hard.
adaptation can happen quickly over things like social media and stuff like that, right? You get so used to seeing certain
Mm-hmm.
things, it becomes normalized. There's so much that everyone shares and puts out there that like you're so far beyond what like I mean, I don't see the value in sharing every moment of my life with the world, but a lot of
Exactly.
people seem to, and I don't think they're realizing they're just mimicking what some marketing company did or some advertiser did or what someone did to get them to make money. They're just mimicking that in their real life, but once you're exposed to that over and over again, it continues to happen. It's like those fucking gender reveal parties that have killed people, started
Yep.
forest fires, like all this
Yep.
stuff because like, oh, I saw that on the internet, that's now normal, that's a cool thing to do, and
So
it must be okay. And
adaptation takes over and
oh,
makes us dumber.
it's
The
completely
Darwinian
it's a
idiots.
completely normal to do this. People do it everywhere. Why would it be different for me? Oh, gee,
Yep.
out here where everything is super dry and there's a forest right here and you're going to be lighting off. Yeah, well, guess what happens? You just burn down, tens of millions of dollars of property and damage to the community. But
Yep.
that's the idea. And then we sort of couple that adaptation with with change blindness, right? And
Now,
there's a yeah,
here's one where people think they're similar. They're similar only because they're in the same part of the brain and how the brain makes order out of chaos, but they're completely different. So adaptation, let me just hit it again and I'll pass
yeah,
it to you for the change blindness. Adaptation example, Brian and I are in an elevator with the people that are doing the roof tire in our hotel, and it smells so bad in the elevator that by floor 3, I got to look at the guy and go, "Hey, how do you get used to that smell?" And he turned and looked at me straight faced and said, "What smell?"
Yeah.
Adaptation. He had done it so long.
Right.
The Arby's and all these restaurants, fast food franchising, selling the nuclear hot burgers. Why? Because people are smoking the kind bud, and they need something very powerful to break through for their senses and their palate. People haven't just decided, oh my gosh, I like habanero peppers now in my hamburger. Those are for a reason. Adaptation has taken over and dulled certain senses, so I got to have other senses that are more popular. So change blindness is slightly different. What does it mean?
Right. So that, and as simple as like that, slow, subtle changes over time, I'm less likely to notice, right? Because of
Yep.
that, because everything we just talked about, how it's we tie everything back to survival. So it doesn't matter if, the chair that I normally sit in is a quarter inch off from where I left it. I won't notice that because it doesn't matter to me, to my
Precisely.
brain, for the purpose of survival. So when they happen slowly over time, that's the slow changes in someone's behavior where we think it comes out of nowhere. Then you go to their Facebook page and you're like, you can go back 10 years and see how incremental changes over time got them to the point where everything was all happy and good and wavy gravy. We're all having fun, to now everything's hate, death, and fear, and everyone is a horrible human being.
Exactly.
You can see those changes, and again, because we're tie everything to survival and we're lazy, and it's not something that's going to just jump right out at us. That change blindness, or another version of sort of inattention blindness, is kind of similar.
Yep.
It takes over, and we don't pay attention to those little changes in our
Yeah,
environment.
but an important part that you just said on is the intention. Inattention blindness. Why? We don't use that. We only use the 4. Why do we use the 4? Because there's 1,000.
Yeah.
And what we did is we picked the 4 that
Right.
are most common that you can equate to any environment. And I'll give you one. We're in Iraq, and it seems like every week somebody's coming up with a new way to place a bomb. So there's these guys that keep showing up with this 55-gallon drum that's burning 24 hours a day. And it's the same 3 or 4 guys that keep showing up. So everybody's paying attention, but because it's a fob, you're fobbed up and you're not walking out there, so it's not dangerous. But it's on the MSR, ASR that makes the turn coming out of the fob. So everybody watches and watches and watches. So we started taking photos thinking that the photos would reveal something. Well, the photos did reveal something. The 55-gallon drum burned down through the asphalt. Then when the 55-gallon drum was gone, they used the hole in the asphalt to put the bomb and replace some of the asphalt. So the day that it was missing, everybody goes, well, let's not go down there. And they found a bomb. And everybody goes, holy shit, you're a genius. No, slow, subtle changes over time mean somebody is trying to fool your eye and your brain. And therefore, you can look out for that anomalous behavior, Brian, and say, what am I getting set up for here? What might be coming if they're doing it a little bit at a time like this?
Yeah, no, and that again, because we're not sort of primed for those things in our environment, it goes back to this is the little things. Those 4 things we kind of just
Yep.
defined is basically a working definition of complacency. That's what people
You're
mean
exactly
by it.
right.
I mean, that's you can't just say don't be complacent. You have to go, these are 4 things that lead to complacency, and this is how it affects you, and this is how it works. How do we counter that? And that's just that's the big thing, is we're wired in a sense for that way. So focus on these things that limit my performance. I have to be aware of, and here are the things I can do to increase my performance, right? To not fall into that trap. And that's the constant change of perspective, the constant moving around, the not following a set routine, being
Yes.
sort of within yourself, predictably unpredictable. You have a loose framework of what you want to do, and then if you're constantly varying that, well, you're forcing yourself to see things a different way, to see them from a different perspective at a different time and place. And literally, that's the shaking up the Etch-a-Sketch that I talk about. Those things are so
Yes.
simple to do that we get accustomed to not doing them, though.
Equate them, folks listening at home, equate them to something you do every day and you'll become more efficient. For example, if you haven't checked your tire pressure in a while, check it on all 4 tires and make sure that it's consistent, because that makes your vehicle more efficient. If you're using a lower grade of fuel, then you may need to use a cleaner in your fuel or clean out your spark plugs and rotor manually. you're saying, I have no
I
idea
don't
what
know.
you're
Yeah.
talking about, old man, because my car doesn't have those. What I'm telling you is if that above your pernal, that little warning light comes on and you're more inclined to cover it with a piece of tape or a Band-Aid, you may
Yeah.
be you're riding for a fall. We call it as cowboys. You're sooner or later going to make a mistake, and you're not going to be able to retract that mistake, even though all the warning signs were there. And I'll give you a Brianism. So Brian was talking to a crowd of RCMP, and he says, "Hey, I want you to pay attention to a certain thing that makes sense." And you went into a story trying to explain to them how the little changes over time created a huge mistake. And you remember that everybody had a very emotional reaction to it because it was still fresh in their mind, and they had lost a couple of people during that. And it was a killer that went on a rampage, killed 22 people, Gabriel Wortman. But Brian, the way you set them up is you set them up. If you would see these things normally, would you pay more attention to them? And the answer is yes. I would definitely pay attention to a person that was doing this. And here, Gabriel Wortman, what was his advantage? He did it over a protracted time. And so because it was longer time, those balls dropped back down. They weren't as interesting. So just like your vehicle is going to break down over time if you don't maintain it, so is your baseline. So what you have to do is create a fidelity-filled baseline for every environment you're liable to go into, and then keep updating it. Because if you don't, it's going to follow the entropic principle and go to the lowest state of
Right.
order, and you're going to miss what? The little things. The little things will fall from through the cracks much more quickly than big things like you were talking. Hey, here comes a gun. Okay. Hey, the guy fired an RPG. Okay. Those things your brain is going to get at hello. But it's those little things in your environment that subtly you go the same way every day. You stop at the same place to eat. You
Yeah.
take your lunch break at the same time. Those create patterns, and those patterns can kill you.
No, and it's back to this whole this is why the little things matter, because a lot of places where we go, it's sometimes the catastrophic event can be boiled down to some small thing that was missed.
Yes.
And that's the whole point behind all of this. It's the all right, hey, one person through the access door, you swiping your card at a time. You're not allowed to piggyback or jump on, or everyone's got their own ways of doing
Yes.
it, or badge someone else in. And everyone's like, yeah, but that's a pain in the ass. Yeah, yeah, it is. And if it's the only way to ensure someone who does not have access doesn't get access. Like it's a very
Exactly.
simple,
It's so
low
simple.
calorie. It's so simple, but we fuck it up, and we can't stick to that because we get lazy, or we go, well, it doesn't matter in this situation, and it's like, okay, you realize you've just changed the standard now. You've just lowered the standard for everything, and that's what it comes back to, is the what you walk past is what you're willing to accept. It's where are you focusing that attention
Right.
on? And the other point about talking about it, it's not bashing people for doing this. It's those are the things that matter. Those are the things that you do to prevent those big catastrophic things. There is no secret
No.
technology or no
No.
secret thing you can buy or person to hire or anything. It's literally just a basic understanding of here are the procedures and policies. Here's how we use them, and then we always do them that way. I mean,
So this is
once
why
you
you'll pay
incorporate it,
over
and
time for that mistake.
and
Yeah.
that's the other side of that coin, Greg, where here's
Yes.
the trap we can fall into. So if you build the trap that you want people to fall into, the behavior you want to see, that will be the trap that they fall into, and it will
You're
be a
exactly
good
right.
one. It will be the one that you want. It will be the behavior that you want exhibited by everyone.
You're precisely correct. So I want to take your example of swiping the card twice, piggybacking. So we have a security guard that covers this entrance, but a security guard means $38,500 a year, plus medical and dental, and I got to do this and that. And the guy can only work 8 hours a day, and we're open 12, so I got to have another guy to give him a couple of days off. So somebody comes to me and gives me a common access card and says, guess what? We can put an access card there, and you don't need that guy anymore. And it's only $7,000 to put it in. So you put it in, people start piggybacking. Now you got to hire a guy to make sure that they don't piggyback. So then you're back to the security guard and the cat card. So then somebody goes, hey, all you got to do is put in a surveillance camera. One guy can handle 4 entrances. Oh, that makes sense. So we fire the other guy, put one guy there, and then guess what happens? He has to take a break, and the other people say, well, listen, this isn't covered by the camera. Brian, we create the
Yeah.
conundrums that end up biting us in the ass. And it's because we don't look at these four with the architect's eye to say, with these four ideas, we can build a foundation, a fundamental way of scanning our day to see where the pitfalls may be. Is my baseline up to date? No. Is my vehicle up to date? No. Is my map of events up to date? No. Am I going to take the same gosh damn route because I waited too long and everything? Yes. You see what I'm trying to say? So you're predictable, and because you're predictable, if you don't change your routine and only training changes behavior, you're going to step in that hole. And today it might be a mud puddle, like, oh, you know that guy in Groundhog Day that keeps coming over. Don't tell me you don't remember.
Yeah.
Exactly. So one day it's just going to be stepping in the water. The other day it's going to be stepping on a landmine, and it's your choice. And can you stop everything? No. Again, you know, the comet, you walk out, you take a left instead of taking a right to pick up the paper, and you get hit by a splinter of a comet coming out of space. But those are so rare, they're remarkable. Everything else is manageable.
They are. And then the one example I think we give, the one that we talked about on the Patreon side, is from the fire, what was it, fireman in Denver or something like that. I mean, it was the same thing, is they get called to that house, you know, I think originally from police officer, and then he goes, oh yeah, I think they're dead in there. I've seen, you know, it doesn't look good. And they walk in, they don't even make it all the way in the house, right? Because they can smell, you know, it smells so bad. They can see the body laying there. Yep. They're going, okay, well, this looks good. They get on, call the doctor at the hospital to do the, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Okay, is there a pulse? No. Is there this? No. Are we seeing any of this? No. Okay, yeah. Then that from what you're describing, that meets my criteria for pronouncing them dead. So then they're like, okay, we got to call the coroner, wait for them to come out. They start leaving, and then what? They walk in, and the lady wakes up and is like, "What the hell are you doing in my house?
Exactly.
What's going on?" You know, and
I need to go to the hospital.
So that was the zombie apocalypse started, but the idea is like, well, how could you possibly make that mistake? That's checking someone's pulse and doing that. That's not a little thing. It's like, well, in that line of work, how many times have they had to do they do that stuff? So all the time. So when they go, oh, this is close enough, I've seen it before, someone told me this. Yeah, you're right. They're clearly dead. There's no reason to go through those motions. It stinks in there. It's like, hey, the person was still alive, right? You're here for the welfare check. So but it's a example on both sides how those things happen, right?
But add to that geographics. What's a natural line of drift?
Yeah,
people are lazy, so they cut corners. Those firemen are professionals. They're wonderful people. They've done
that 1,000 times in their career.
But guess what? On this, they allowed entropy to take over, and they cut a corner. And that corner that they cut made the difference between life and death for a human who's now dead. They're alive and healthy, but they were pronounced dead, so they can walk around and go, yeah, I'm the undead.
Oh, do they have to pay taxes?
I don't think so, not anymore. I think what's happening here is we're illustrating the point over and over and over. And folks, that's what we do. We want to make sure that we drive it home, that it's those little baby things. Look, if you don't get your blood pressure checked, you're going to die of heart disease. And it's a little thing, but guess what? It's a pain in the ass. If you don't take your diabetic meds and do your finger sticks, you're going to die. It's a little thing. Do you get what I'm trying to say? If you don't get Brian's example, if you don't get your STD cleared up once in a while, do you get what I'm saying? Brian, the perfect storm of venereal disease, you know, it's going to come back and bite you in the ass or somebody else in the ass. But each his own. The idea being that little baby things lined up. You're welcome, by the way. By the way, happy birthday, Marines. It's almost the 10th.
Yeah.
But it's the little baby things, Brian, that add up and end up slipping by unless you use close inspection. So we're telling you, take a break today. Take a look around. Like, you know, propping open that door, Brian, that's the fire door.
Yeah.
We prop open that door, and guess what? One day goes by and nothing happens. 3 days go by. The next thing, you have a horrific event. All of those things are visible if you spread them over time and compare them to the baseline.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's a pretty good wrap on everything we just talked about. But you know, we've sort of talked about we talk about the little things indirectly in everything that we do, because that's what we focus on, the pocket lint, right? And so I wanted to give some of the definitions of how these things sort of affect you in a negative manner. It's on board for your survival. It's on board for a good thing, right? It's kept the human race alive despite our greatest attempts for a really long time. And so that's the point. And it goes back to, well, then what like I said a couple minutes ago, what is the groove of the record that I want to fall into? Well, I want to write out what that groove is so that my brain falls back on that every time, but it's a good thing. You get what I
Yep.
mean? It's what is that behavioral change that I
And that
want?
sounds dichotomous. It sounds dichotomous. You're saying change up your route selection into work so you don't become a victim, but creating that change is a groove on the record. So
Yes.
both can exist in the same place, folks.
Yes.
What Brian's saying is rehearse it so you do it consistently, and being unpredictable consistently sounds dichotomous, but it's not. It's a life truth. It's a plan. You have to
Well,
say things. You have to do things. You have to expend some calories every single day. Like if you don't go to the gym, you're not going to get go low. All those other things. They don't want to get sued. So kiss my ass. But the idea is, what do they all say? Diet and exercise at the bottom, and this program will work. Well, if I eat fucking cardboard 3 days a week, do you
yeah.
get what I'm trying to say? And diet and exercise, it's going to work. Those things have to be consistent, though. You can't do them hit and miss. You can't do a workout today and a workout next December and go, hell, I'm not losing any weight, Brian. What's going on? The simple things around you, your car, your health, your family relationship. If you don't drop the wife or the husband a card now and again and tell them how
Yeah.
much you love them, and drop a rose on the table and say, can't wait to see you tonight, you're going to be looking for hobo stab insurance and trying to find another lover. It's just a simple little baby things that are going to make your relationship better.
Yeah. And I don't know why you would need hobo stab insurance when you're out looking for another lover, Greg, but
Talk about hobo stab insurance. Okay. There was a woman that was driving a Porsche, and the poor homeless guy says, could you move your car because your music's so loud and I'm dying from the
oh
exhaust?
yeah.
She shot him.
Yeah.
Okay, you remember this a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so finally she
That
got
was down
handed
in like
down her,
Tennessee or something,
yeah,
right?
she
Yeah.
got handed her a sentence, and now she's all over the news media going, this is bullshit. I can't believe that. Do you know my name was drugged through the mud? Stop. Again, Brian, it's the little things. You can't see the forest for the trees because your
Yeah.
brain is overwhelmed on bullshit. There's a lot of people out there fighting every day to survive, and you shot one of them. So
Yeah.
it goes hand in hand with what we're talking about. And right back to the little things. Brian, you can influence where you park and checking out the parking lot. You can influence how you drive
So
and using your blinker and
that's
checking out the exit beforehand.
then that's the point, is that I can't control, I have very little control over who the president of the United States is, but you know what?
Right.
I can control my life. I can
Yeah.
control the decisions I make. It's stop worrying about these big things and focus on those little things, because guess
Exactly.
what? You can influence them. You can make small changes, whether that's personally, like you said, in a relationship, to my
Exactly.
security posture, to my organization, to my communication.
My community, my
That's
house.
it.
My house is going to increase in value if I paint it once in a while.
Oh,
It's little things,
a 1% change compounding over time is
Yeah.
massive. So
Yeah.
I think that was sort of the point of all this, and focusing on
I
those
hope
little
so.
things.
I hope we got in there.
I don't know. I've been up since 1:30,
Well,
so
both of
I
us haven't slept in a
don't,
couple of days, and the cold medicine
which
has
is
rendered me
fun.
stupid.
Yeah,
Just so you know, folks.
yeah.
So if I'm even more disjointed than before, now you know why.
Yeah, I freebase that Advil cold and sinus. That seems to
Is
be
that
the
good?
best way to do it. Well, I don't know.
Well, you gave me two
I
of
don't
those,
know.
and I
I don't know where
washed
I'm
them
at right
down with
now.
that Canadian NyQuil,
Oh God.
and I swear I had no idea what I was doing for like the next 8 hours.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good feeling. Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone for
Are
tuning
we
in. We
starting or
had
ending this podcast?
I don't remember actually. Next topic.
Exactly.
No, so, there we got a lot more on the Patreon
Yeah, we
side.
do.
We appreciate those of you who are Patreon listeners and subscribers. Please keep reaching out with your questions and your ideas for podcast episodes. Is where a lot of this stuff comes from. We're trying to slowly build that, which would
Yep.
be cool. But thanks everyone for listening. Please share it with your friends if you enjoyed it. Share it with your friends if you didn't enjoy it. Just get it out there, right? Always reach out to us at leftofgreg@gmail.com. And any final words, Greg?
Yeah, 4. One, Brian will put the standard up there. That's a
Oh
really
yeah,
good
the
episode.
podcast. Yeah.
Those guys are wonderful. We
Yeah,
love
they
them.
were great.
The Carry the Load had a really good one recently. Brian might put the link up for that. The 10th is the Marine Corps' birthday. Please reach out and
Yeah,
thank the Marine
I
Corps.
think this will
And
go
it's
on next
Veterans
week.
Day
So,
coming up
but
too,
yeah,
buddy.
Yeah, this will
So
come out
I mean,
next week, but yeah. It's
yeah, it
all
doesn't matter.
happening. It's close enough.
Retroactively, go exactly. We got belated birthday cards. I know. I seen them in the storm,
Yeah,
and so go out and do something nice today.
sounds good. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and don't forget that training changes behavior.